Mother helps a confused man on the street and discovers he is her first son abandoned as a baby. Barbara Wilson was walking hurriedly through the town square of Springfield when her attention was caught by a scene that made her stop immediately. A young man was standing in the middle of the path with a lost and disoriented look, firmly holding the hand of a small child who was wearing a red beanie. It was exactly at that moment that something inside Barbara awakened. The young man seemed completely lost, as if he didn't know where he was or what he should do next. The child, who couldn't have been more than 5 years old, gently pulled his father's hand and whispered something in his ear. "Dad, the lady over there is looking at us," said the boy, discreetly pointing to Barbara. The man looked up and met her gaze. For a second that seemed like an eternity. Barbara felt something strange in her chest, a sensation she couldn't explain. There was something in those eyes that touched her deeply, a vulnerability that made her forget her hurry. "Excuse me," said Barbara, approaching slowly. "Do you need help?" The man blinked a few times, as if trying to focus on the present. His hands trembled slightly, and he seemed confused about where exactly he was. "I don't know," he replied in a low voice. "Sometimes I get like this, kind of lost. My son helps me when this happens." The child looked at Barbara with big, intelligent eyes. "Daddy gets confused sometimes," the boy explained naturally, "but I know how to take care of him. It's just harder today." Barbara felt her heart tighten seeing that small child taking on such a big responsibility. "How about we sit on that bench over there?" she suggested, pointing to a bench near the fountain in the square. "I can get you some water." "That would be very kind of you," said the man, still seeming a bit lost. They went to the bench, and Barbara ran to a nearby convenience store to buy water. As she walked, she couldn't stop thinking about that man's gaze. There was something familiar there, something that stirred her in a way she didn't understand. When she returned with the water bottles, she found the man sitting on the bench with the child beside him. The boy was telling his father something, trying to distract him. "Here you go," said Barbara, handing a bottle to each. "Thank you very much, Mum," said the man, and his voice was firmer now. "Sorry about this. I've had these episodes since I was a child. I can't really explain it, but sometimes I get kind of lost in time." "No need to apologize," replied Barbara, sitting next to them. "We all need help sometimes." The child drank water in small sips, watching Barbara with curiosity. "My name is Tommy," said the boy, "and this is my dad, Michael." "Nice to meet you both," said Barbara. "I'm Barbara. Michael drank the water slowly, and Barbara noticed that his hands still trembled a bit. There was a deep sadness in his eyes that made her uneasy. "Do you live here in town?" asked Barbara, trying to make conversation. "We live in a small apartment nearby," replied Michael, pointing in a vague direction. "I work as a night janitor to support Tommy." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Barbara felt a pang in her chest hearing about their difficulties. There was something about that man that moved her deeply, a connection she couldn't explain. "And Tommy's mother?" Barbara asked delicately. Michael lowered his head, and it was Tommy who answered. "Mommy left when I was 2 years old," said the boy without bitterness, as if it was something he had already accepted. "Daddy said she couldn't stay, but that she loved me." Barbara's heart broke hearing that. A mother abandoning her child was something she understood better than she cared to admit. "Michael," said Barbara softly, "have you always had these episodes of confusion?" "For as long as I can remember," he replied. "I grew up in several foster homes. People always gave up on me because of this. I only managed to stay in one fixed place when I turned 18. Barbara felt a chill down her spine. Foster homes, episodes of confusion since childhood. There was something about this story that was deeply troubling her. "Do you remember anything from your childhood? About your biological parents?" Michael shook his head slowly. "Almost nothing. I just have a vague memory of someone singing to me, a woman with a sweet voice, but it might just be my imagination." Barbara's world seemed to stop for a moment. A sweet voice, singing. She remembered how she used to sing to the baby she carried for 9 months 40 years ago. Michael, she said, trying to control her voice, do you happen to have anything from when you were born? Some document or... I have this here, said Michael, pulling up his sleeve and showing a faded plastic bracelet on his wrist. It's a hospital bracelet. I've worn it since I was a baby. It's the only thing I have from when I was born. Barbara looked at the bracelet and felt her legs go weak. She recognized that bracelet. She recognized it because she herself had put it on the wrist of a newborn 40 years ago, before giving him up for adoption. Can I see it up close? She asked, her voice trembling. Michael extended his arm, and Barbara gently held his wrist to examine the bracelet. There it was, faded but still legible, the name she had whispered into her baby's ear before saying goodbye forever. Michael Joseph. Tears began to stream down Barbara's face without her being able to control them. Her hands trembled as she still held Michael's wrist. "Ma'am, are you all right?" asked Tommy, worried. Michael also noticed Barbara's emotional state and, despite his own confusion, moved closer to her. "Barbara, what's wrong? Did something happen?" She couldn't speak. How could she explain that she was looking at the son she had been forced to give up 40 years ago? How could she tell that this confused and abandoned man was the baby she had held in her arms for only a few hours? I need to go," said Barbara, standing up abruptly. "I'm sorry." "Wait." Michael tried to stand up too, but he was still a bit disoriented. "You helped me. At least let me thank you properly." Barbara stopped and turned to him. Seeing that face, so similar to hers when she was young, was almost unbearable. "No need to thank me," she said, wiping her tears. You'll be all right." "We always are," said Tommy, taking his father's hand. "Daddy and I take care of each other." Those simple words from a 5-year-old child were like a punch to Barbara's stomach. There was her grandson, taking care of his own father because the mother had abandoned them both. Barbara left there unable to stop crying. She arrived home in a state of shock, locked herself in her room and cried as she hadn't cried in years. The son she had been forced to abandon was there, in her town, struggling and alone with a small child. That night, Barbara couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, remembering everything. She was only 16 when she got pregnant with Michael. Her conservative and religious family didn't accept the pregnancy. She was hidden from the neighbors, spent the 9 months practically locked at home, and as soon as Michael was born, she was forced to give him up for adoption. She remembered every detail of that day at the hospital, as she held the baby in her arms, as she sang softly to him, as she whispered his name in his ear before the social workers took him away. She had begged to know where he would go, but they told her it was a closed adoption and that it would be better for everyone if she knew nothing. For years, Barbara got married, had another son, David, who was now 35, but she could never completely forget her first baby. She always wondered where he might be, if he was okay, if he had found a family that loved him. The next day, Barbara couldn't focus on anything. She had worked as a seamstress from home for over 20 years, but that day her hands trembled so much she couldn't sew a single stitch. All she could think about was Michael and Tommy. In the afternoon, unable to resist, she returned to the town square. She didn't know if she would find them there again, but she needed to see them. To her surprise, they were there, sitting on the same bench as the day before. Michael seemed more lucid today, but there was still a fog in his eyes. Tommy was running around the fountain, playing by himself. "Michael," called Barbara, approaching slowly. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Barbara, it's so good to see you again. I wanted to thank you for your help yesterday." "How are you both today?" "Better," replied Michael. "Tommy told me you cried yesterday. I hope it wasn't because of us." Barbara sat down beside him, watching Tommy play. "Michael, you said yesterday you grew up in foster homes. Do you know anything about your biological parents?" Michael sighed deeply. "I know very little. Only that my biological mother was very young when she had me. They said she had no choice but to give me up for adoption." Barbara's heart raced. That was exactly it. She had had no choice. "And you never tried to look for her?" "I've tried a few times, but it's a closed adoption. I couldn't get any information. Besides," Michael hesitated. Sometimes I think it's better this way. If she abandoned me when I was a baby, she probably wouldn't want to see me now with all my problems. Barbara felt a deep pain in her chest. Her son thought he had been abandoned for lack of love, when in reality he had been taken from her arms against her will. "Michael," she said carefully, "have you ever sought medical help for these episodes of confusion?" "I have, but it's very expensive. The specialists who could help me charge amounts I don't have. I work all night to pay the rent and support Tommy. There's nothing left for a private doctor." "What about the public system?" "The waiting list is years long. I've been on the list for over 5 years and they still haven't called me." Barbara absorbed this information. Her son had been suffering for so long, unable to get proper help, struggling alone to raise a small child. "Michael," she said impulsively, "what if someone wanted to help you? A person who could pay for the doctors?" Michael looked at her suspiciously. "Why would anyone do that for us? You barely know us." Barbara had to think fast. Sometimes people help others simply because they feel it's the right thing to do. Tommy came running over, interrupting the conversation. "Dad, I'm thirsty." "I'll buy you some water," said Barbara, quickly getting up. "You don't have to, Barbara. You've already done so much for us yesterday." "It's nothing," she said, already walking away. As she bought water at the convenience store, Barbara made a decision. She was going to help her son, even if he didn't know who she was. She had savings set aside from a lifetime of work. She could use that money to give Michael the medical treatment he needed. When she returned with the water, she found Tommy sitting on Michael's lap. The boy had taken off his red beanie, and Barbara could see his face completely. The shock was even greater. Tommy looked exactly like David when he was a child. "Tommy," said Barbara, handing him the water, "how old are you?" "5 years old," replied the boy. "I'll be 6 next month." "And you help your father a lot, don't you?" "Yes, I do. When Daddy gets confused, I hold his hand and count to 10. Then he feels better." Barbara looked at Michael, who was smiling tenderly at his son. "He learned that on his own," said Michael. "Since he was little, when he sees me confused, he does that. It's as if he instinctively knows how to calm me down." Barbara thought about how love and care could be passed on even when people didn't know about their blood ties. "Michael," she said, "I want to make a proposal to you." "What kind of proposal?" "Let me pay for specialist appointments for you. No strings attached, no expectations in return." Michael shook his head immediately. "I can't accept that. I don't know you well enough to accept such a big help." "What if I said I have my personal reasons for wanting to help?" "What reasons?" Barbara took a deep breath. She couldn't tell the truth, not yet, but she needed something to convince him. "I've been through difficult times in my life, Michael. I know what it's like to need help and have nowhere to turn. If I can help now, I want to do it." Michael looked into her eyes for a long moment. "Why do I feel like you're not telling me everything?" Barbara's heart raced. Had her son always been this intuitive? "Sometimes people have complicated reasons for doing good things," she said. "Does that make the help less valuable?" Michael considered this for a moment. "Tommy, what do you think of Barbara?" The boy looked at her with his big, serious eyes. "I like her. She has pretty eyes, and she takes care of us." Michael smiled. "Then it's decided. If you really want to help us, Barbara, we'll accept. But with one condition." "What?" "I want to get to know you better. I want to know why you're doing this." Barbara nodded, knowing that this conversation would eventually have to happen. "Agreed." In the following days, Barbara began to appear in the town square regularly. She always brought snacks for Tommy, invariably things he loved, as if she instinctively knew what the boy liked. She scheduled appointments with the best neurologists in the area for Michael, saying it was an anonymous benefactor. During these daily visits, Barbara got to know her son's life better. Michael worked overnight as a janitor in a commercial building. During the day, he took care of Tommy, took him to school, helped with homework. He was a dedicated father, despite all his difficulties. "You know, Barbara," said Michael one of those afternoons, "there's something strange that always bothers me." "What?" "I have a very vague memory of someone singing to me when I was very small. I don't know if it's real or just imagination, but this memory always comes back when I'm confused." Barbara felt a chill. She remembered singing to Michael when he was in her belly, and especially during those few hours in the hospital before she gave him up. "What is that song like?" Michael began to hum a simple melody softly. Barbara recognized it immediately. It was the same lullaby she had sung to him, and that she later sang to David as a baby. "It's a beautiful song," she said, trying to control her emotion. "Sometimes I sing it to Tommy when he can't sleep, and the strange thing is that it always works." Tommy, who was playing nearby, overheard the conversation. "It's true. Daddy has been singing that song to me since I was really little. It's the most beautiful song in the world." Barbara had to turn away to hide her tears. Her son was passing on, to her grandson, the same song she had sung to him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. A week later, Michael had his first appointment with Dr. Richard Bennett, one of the most respected neurologists in the region. Barbara was anxious for the results. When Michael returned from the appointment, she found him in the town square with a different expression on his face. There was hope in his eyes. "How did it go?" asked Barbara. "Unbelievable," said Michael. "The doctor said my symptoms might not be a permanent condition. He thinks it could be related to emotional trauma from childhood." Barbara felt a mix of relief and guilt. Emotional trauma from childhood, certainly related to the early abandonment. He ordered several tests and said he has a treatment that could help. But Barbara... Michael hesitated. The doctor was curious about who's paying for the treatment. He said it's expensive and asked about this mysterious benefactor. "What did you say?" "That it's a friend who wants to help, but he seemed a bit suspicious. He said it's rare for someone to spend so much money on strangers." Barbara knew this situation would become unsustainable eventually, but for now the important thing was that Michael was getting help. During the following weeks, Michael underwent several tests. Barbara kept track of everything from a distance, always asking about the results, always offering to help with anything they needed. It was during this period that something unexpected happened. Barbara was in the town square with Michael and Tommy when a man approached them. "Mom," said the man, "what are you doing here?" Barbara froze. It was David, her youngest son. He had left work early and was passing through the square when he saw her. "David," said Barbara, trying to hide her nervousness. "I was just getting some fresh air." David looked at Michael and Tommy with curiosity, and then his gaze fixed on Michael with a strange expression. "Mom? Who are these people?" They're friends," said Barbara. "Michael, Tommy, this is my son David." Michael stood up to greet David, but when the two men stood side by side, the resemblance between them was impossible to ignore. They had the same height, the same facial structure, the same eyes. David stared at Michael with an astonished expression. "Sorry," said David, "but you look a lot like me. Do people always comment on that?" Michael also noticed the resemblance. "Actually, no. But now that you mention it, it's really striking." Barbara was panicking. She hadn't expected David to show up there, much less that the resemblance between the brothers would be so obvious. "Well, we were just leaving," said Barbara quickly. "David, can you walk me home?" "Of course, Mom. It was nice to meet you," said David, still looking at Michael with curiosity. As they walked away, David bombarded Barbara with questions. "Mom, who are those people? And why does that man look so much like me?" "David, they're just acquaintances," said Barbara, trying to sound casual. "Mom, I'm not stupid. There's something you're not telling me. And since when do you hang out in the town square making friends with strangers?" Barbara knew she couldn't hide everything anymore. David was smart and already suspicious. "It's complicated, son." "Then explain it to me." They arrived home and Barbara served coffee, trying to buy time to think about what to say. "David," she said finally, "do you remember me ever mentioning that you had an older brother?" David stopped with the cup halfway to his mouth. "You always said I was an only child." "Not exactly. You always asked if you had siblings, and I always changed the subject." "Mom, what are you talking about?" Barbara took a deep breath. It was time to tell at least part of the truth. "When I was 16, before I married your father, I got pregnant by another boy. My family forced me to give the baby up for adoption." David was silent for a long moment, processing the information. "You had another child, and you never told me?" "It was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, David. For years I tried to forget, tried to move on." "And what does that have to do with that man in the town square?" Barbara hesitated. "Would it be better to tell everything at once or take it slow?" I'm almost certain that Michael is my firstborn." David dropped his cup on the floor, making a loud noise. "What?" "The hospital bracelet, his age, the confusion episodes he's had since childhood, the resemblance to you. It all makes sense." "Mom, are you telling me that man is my brother?" "I think so." David stood up and started pacing the room, running his hands through his hair. "Mom, I've had a brother for 35 years and you never told me, and now you found out he's here in our town and decided, what? To play happy family without telling anyone the truth? David, it's not like that." "Then what is it like?" David was clearly irritated. "You're lying to him, you're lying to me. The man has a young son, he's going through hard times, and you're pretending to be a kind stranger." Barbara started to cry. "I didn't know how to handle this, David. It was a shock to find out he was here. And you thought it was better to lie to everyone? I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that you wouldn't forgive me. Scared that Michael would hate me for abandoning him. Scared of ruining everything again." David stopped pacing and looked at his mother. "Mom, you didn't abandon him. You were 16 and forced by your family. That's different. But he doesn't know that. To him, I'm the mother who abandoned him." David sighed and sat down again. "Mom, you need to tell him the truth." "I can't." "Then I'll tell him." "David, no." "Mom, you're brothers. He has the right to know who his family is. And I have the right to know my brother. What if he wants nothing to do with us when he learns the truth? Then at least he'll know he wasn't abandoned for lack of love." Barbara knew David was right, but she was still terrified at the idea of telling Michael everything. The next day, Barbara arrived at the town square earlier than usual, still shaken by the conversation with David. Michael and Tommy were already there, and she noticed Michael seemed more confused than normal. "How are you today?" asked Barbara. "A bit lost," admitted Michael. "Last night I had some stronger episodes. Tommy had to help me several times." "Daddy dreamed about the woman who sang," said Tommy. "He woke up crying." Barbara's heart tightened. Were the dreams about her becoming more frequent as the treatment progressed? "Michael, what do you remember about these dreams?" "They're always the same. A woman with dark hair singing that song. Sometimes it seems like she's crying too, and I have the feeling she didn't want to leave me." Barbara had to control herself not to tell everything right then. That's when David appeared. He had decided he couldn't wait any longer for his mother to find the courage. "Hi, Mom," said David, approaching the bench. "David, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk with you," he said, looking directly at Michael. Michael stood up, still somewhat confused from the previous night's episode. "Hi, David. How are you?" "Fine, thank you. Michael, can I speak with you privately?" Barbara panicked. "David, it's not a good time." "Mom, it's the best time," said David firmly. "Michael, could you come with me over there?" Michael looked at Barbara, confused by the tension in the air, but nodded. They walked a few meters away, leaving Barbara and Tommy on the bench. "Michael," said David, "I need to tell you something very important." "What is it?" David took a deep breath. "We're brothers." Michael stood still for a moment, processing the information. "What do you mean?" "Barbara isn't just some stranger who decided to help you. She's our mother." Michael shook his head. "That doesn't make sense. Why would she?" "Because she had you when she was very young and was forced by her family to give you up for adoption. She never forgot you, Michael, never stopped wondering if you were okay." Michael looked at Barbara, who was on the bench with tears streaming down her face. "She knew who I was from the first day, ever since she saw the hospital bracelet." Michael felt the world spinning around him. The mental confusion that was already there got worse with the emotional shock. I need to..." He started backing away, staggering. "Michael, wait!" David tried to hold him, but Michael was already in full crisis. Barbara saw what was happening and ran to them, leaving Tommy on the bench. "Michael!" she shouted, reaching him. But Michael was completely lost now, more confused than she had ever seen him. He looked at her without recognition, his eyes glazed over. Who are you people?" he asked in a weak voice. Tommy, frightened to see his father in that state, ran to them and held Michael's hand. "Daddy, it's me, Tommy. You're okay. Take deep breaths." But this time, not even his son's presence could calm Michael. The revelation had been too much of a shock for his already fragile mind. "We need to get him to the hospital," said Barbara, desperate. David was already calling an ambulance. Within minutes, Michael was taken to the hospital, still in a state of deep confusion. Barbara and Tommy went with him, while David followed in his car. At the hospital, Michael was sedated so he could rest and recover from the episode. The doctor said the emotional shock had intensified his symptoms and that he would need a few days to stabilize. Barbara stayed by Michael's bedside, holding his hand and silently asking for forgiveness. Tommy was sleeping in a nearby chair, exhausted from crying so much from worry about his father. "Mom," said David, approaching, "you can't blame yourself for this. If I had told the truth from the beginning, he would have reacted the same way. It was too much information to process all at once." Barbara looked at her sedated son in the bed. Even asleep, he seemed agitated. "David, what if he never forgives me?" "He will forgive, Mom. When the initial shock passes, he'll understand you had no choice." For the next 3 days, Michael remained hospitalized. Barbara never left his bedside, not even to eat. David brought her food and took care of Tommy, who also refused to leave the hospital. On the 3rd day, Michael finally woke up lucid. His eyes immediately met Barbara's. "You're my mother," he said, not as a question. Barbara nodded, tears in her eyes. "I am. And David is my brother." "Yes." Michael stayed silent for a long moment, processing everything. "Why didn't you tell me from the start?" Barbara took a deep breath before answering. "Because I was afraid, Michael. Afraid you'd hate me, afraid you wouldn't forgive me for giving you up for adoption. Tell me everything, from the beginning." And Barbara told him. She talked about the pregnancy at 16, about the pressure from her conservative family, about how she was forced to hide the pregnancy for months. She told him about that day at the hospital, how she held Michael in her arms and sang to him, how she didn't want to give him up but was forced to. "I wanted to look for you so many times over the years," she said, "but it was a closed adoption, and I didn't have the means to hire investigators. I always wondered if you were okay, if your adoptive parents loved you." Michael absorbed the whole story in silence. "My adoptive parents gave up on me when I was 8, he finally said. "They couldn't handle my episodes of confusion." Barbara felt a deep pain in her chest. "Michael, I am so sorry." "If I had known." "You couldn't have known," said Michael. "You were just a girl. There was no way you could have looked for me." Tommy, who had woken up and was listening to the conversation, approached the bed. "Daddy, so Barbara is my grandma?" Michael looked at his son and then at Barbara. "Yes, son, she is your grandmother." Tommy smiled and climbed onto the bed to hug Michael. "That's great. I always wanted to have a grandma." Tommy's simplicity and innocence broke the tension in the room. Barbara began to cry, this time with relief. "Michael," she said, "can you forgive me?" Michael extended his free hand to her. "Mom, you didn't do anything that needs forgiveness. You were a child too, forced to make an impossible decision." Barbara took her son's hand, and for the first time in 40 years she could touch him knowing who he was. "I love you, my son. I've always loved you, from the day you were born." "I love you too, Mum." David, who was watching the scene from the doorway, approached the bed. "And I'm very happy to meet my older brother," he said, smiling. Michael looked at David. "So now I have a complete family." "The most complete family you could imagine," said David. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. The doctors allowed Michael to be discharged the next day, but recommended he continue treatment. Now, however, the emotional context was completely different. Dr. Bennett explained that many of Michael's episodes of confusion were related to the trauma of abandonment and the lack of stable family bonds. With proper emotional support and knowing your family history, the treatment will have a much better chance of success, explained the doctor. Barbara took Michael and Tommy to her home. It was a simple but cozy house with 2 bedrooms. She insisted they stay with her while Michael recovered completely. "Mom, you don't have to do this," said Michael. "I want to. I have 40 years to make up for." David was also excited about the new family dynamic. He and Michael spent hours talking, getting to know each other, sharing stories of their lives. "You know what's funny?" said David one evening while they were in the living room. "I always felt like something was missing in our family. Now I know what it was." "I always dreamed of having siblings," said Michael. "In the foster homes, I saw other kids with brothers and sisters and felt jealous." Tommy was on Barbara's lap, listening to the adults' conversations. To him, the whole situation was a great adventure. Suddenly, he had a grandma and an uncle. "Grandma," said Tommy, "can you sing that song that Daddy sings to me?" "Which song, sweetheart?" "The one that makes him sleep when he's worried." Michael hummed the melody, and Barbara recognized it immediately. It was the same song she had sung to him when he was a baby. "Of course I can," said Barbara, and began to sing. As she sang, Michael closed his eyes and let himself be carried away by the melody. It was the first time in his life that he heard that song sung by the voice that had been recorded in his deepest memory. "It's just like in my dream," he said, moved. During the following weeks, the family adjusted to their new reality. Michael continued his medical treatment, but now with all the emotional support he had always lacked. His episodes of confusion became increasingly rare. Barbara discovered she had a natural talent for taking care of Tommy. The boy adored her, and she could finally be the grandmother she had always wanted to be. David and Michael developed a deep friendship. Despite the age difference of just a few years, David took on the role of younger brother with affection, always willing to help Michael with anything he needed. One day, about 2 months after the revelation, Barbara was preparing lunch when Michael approached her in the kitchen. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, my son." "Do you regret looking for me, for helping me before telling me the truth?" Barbara stopped what she was doing and looked at Michael. "Never. It was the best thing I've ever done in my life." "Why?" "Because I was thinking, you could have lived the rest of your life without knowing I was here, without having to deal with all my problems." "Michael," said Barbara, holding her son's face, "you are not a problem. You are my son, and I love you exactly as you are. Even with all the difficulties don't define you, my son. What defines you is the amazing man you've become, the wonderful father you are to Tommy, the kind person you are." Michael hugged Barbara tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I never gave up. Not when I was forced to give you up, and not when I found you in the town square. A mother never gives up on her child." At that moment, Tommy came running into the kitchen. "Grandma, Uncle David is teaching me how to ride a bike. Come see." Barbara smiled, seeing her grandson's joy. "Let's go. Dad needs to see this too," she said to Michael. They went out to the backyard, where David was holding the small bike while Tommy tried to balance. "Look, Dad, I almost did it by myself." Michael approached and held the other side of the bike. "You're doing great, son." Barbara watched the scene, her 2 sons helping her grandson learn to ride a bike, and felt immense gratitude for how life had worked out. Dr. Bennett was impressed with Michael's progress. In just 3 months of treatment with family support, the episodes of confusion had almost completely disappeared. "It's amazing how love and belonging can heal old traumas," the doctor told Barbara during an appointment. "So he's going to be okay?" "He's already okay, Barbara. What he had wasn't an illness, it was an emotional wound that needed to be treated. Now that he knows where he came from, who his family is, the wound is healing." Barbara left the doctor's office with tears of joy. Her son was finally healing. That night during dinner, Michael made an announcement. "Family, I have some news for you." Everyone stopped eating and looked at him. What? Asked David. I got a new job, a day job. I'm going to work as an administrative assistant at a company downtown. Michael, that's wonderful, said Barbara. It means I won't be working the graveyard shift anymore. I'll be able to have normal hours, spend more time with Tommy, have dinner with you all every day. Tommy clapped his hands. Dad, that's awesome. Now you can take me to school in the morning. Yes, I will, son. And I'll be able to pick you up too. David raised his glass of soda. A toast to my brother and his new life. Everyone raised their glasses. To family, said Barbara. To family, everyone repeated. A few months later, Barbara had an idea. Michael had been living with her for so long that she decided to renovate the house to better accommodate everyone. With her savings and David's help, she built an extra bedroom and expanded the living room. Mom, you didn't have to do this, said Michael. I want you all to feel truly at home. We already do. Then now you'll feel even more so. The renovation took 2 months, but the result was a beautiful, spacious house where everyone had their own space but could live together as a family. Michael also decided to go to the school where Tommy was studying to tell them about the new family situation. The teacher was moved to learn that Tommy now had a grandmother and an uncle present in his life. He was always a special child, the teacher told Michael, but ever since you moved into your mother's house, he's been even happier and more confident. It was true. Tommy had completely blossomed with all the attention and love he was receiving. Barbara would take him to school and pick him up whenever Michael was working. David would play with him on weekends, and Michael could finally be the present father he had always wanted to be. 1 year after the meeting in the town square, the family decided to throw a party to celebrate. Barbara prepared a special lunch with all of Michael and Tommy's favorite dishes. During the party, Michael stood up to make a speech. A year ago, I was a lost, confused man with no direction in life. I only had my son and my doubts about who I really was. He looked at Barbara. Then I met a kind stranger in a town square who helped me on one of my worst days. I didn't know that stranger was actually the person I had been looking for my whole life without even knowing it. Barbara wiped her eyes. Mom, thank you for not giving up. Thank you for looking for me, for taking care of me even before you told me the truth. Thank you for giving me not just a mother, but a complete family. He turned to David. David, thank you for being the brother I always wanted to have, for accepting me right away, for taking care of Tommy as if he had always been your nephew. David smiled. You've always been my brother. We just didn't know it. Michael picked Tommy up. And you, my son, thank you for being my guide through all those difficult years, for taking care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. Daddy, now we have a big family, said Tommy, smiling. Yes, we do, son. The family we always deserved to have. Barbara stood up and hugged all 3 of her men at once. Thank you, God, for bringing us together, she whispered. That night, after David had gone home and Tommy had gone to sleep, Michael and Barbara stayed in the living room talking. Mom, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Did you have any other children after David? Barbara shook her head. No. After David, I couldn't get pregnant again. The doctors said it might have been complications from your birth since I was so young. Michael felt guilty. I'm sorry. Don't be. I always felt like I had 2 children, even without knowing where you were. Now I know I was right. And David's father? What happened to him? Barbara sighed. He left when David was 10, said he couldn't handle the pressure of raising a family. Truthfully, I think he always knew I carried a pain I couldn't explain. You never got involved with anyone else? Not seriously. I was always too busy working and raising David, and I always had this feeling that something was missing in my life. Michael held his mother's hand. Now you have your complete family. Now I do. 2 years after the reunion, Michael received a job offer for a promotion. He would be a team supervisor with a much better salary. Mom, with this salary I can rent a bigger house for me and Tommy, he told Barbara. Barbara felt a tightness in her chest. You want to move out? It's not that we want to. It's just that maybe it's time for us to have our independence. You've already done so much for us. Barbara tried to hide her sadness. Of course, my son. You have the right to have your own home. That night, Barbara couldn't sleep. The thought of Michael and Tommy moving away made her very sad. She had gotten used to having a full house, taking care of her grandson every day, having family dinners every night. The next day, David noticed his mother was different. "Mom, what's wrong?" Barbara told him about Michael and Tommy's possible move. "And you don't want them to move?" "It's not that I don't want. I'm just going to miss it so much. These 2 years have been the best of my life." David thought for a moment. "Mom, why don't you suggest that we buy a bigger lot and build a large house for the whole family?" "What do you mean?" "A house where everyone has their privacy, but where we can all still live together." "I would love that too." Barbara smiled for the first time in days. "Do you think Michael would agree?" "There's only one way to find out." That night during dinner, David brought up the subject. "Michael, Mom told me about your promotion. Congratulations." "Thank you. I'm still thinking about moving." "Actually, I had an idea about that," said David. "About what if, instead of you moving out, we built a new house for the whole family?" Michael stopped eating. "What do you mean?" "A big house, where everyone would have their own space, but where we could keep living together as a family. I can contribute financially, you can too with your new salary, and Mom with her savings." Barbara looked at Michael hopefully. "What do you think of the idea?" Michael looked at Tommy. "Son, what do you think? Do you want to keep living with Grandma and Uncle David?" "Yes," Tommy answered immediately. "I don't want to move, I like it here." Michael smiled. "Then it's decided. We'll build our family home." The construction of the new house took 8 months, but the result was perfect. A single-story house with 5 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, a large kitchen, a spacious backyard where Tommy could play, and a barbecue area where the family could gather. Everyone had their private space, but there were also many common areas where they could spend time together. Barbara finally had the house of her dreams, a house full of family. On moving day, Barbara took one last look at the old house where she had raised David and been reunited with Michael. "Thank you, little house," she whispered. "You sheltered so many important moments for our family." Michael heard her and approached his mother. "You know what we're going to do with it?" "What?" "We're going to rent it to a family in need. That way it will continue to shelter beautiful stories." Barbara smiled. "You have a generous heart, my son. I learned from you." In the new house, the family's life flourished even more. Barbara had her own studio where she could sew. David had a home office for when he needed to work from home. Michael had a room for himself and another for Tommy, and everyone had the large living room where they gathered every night. Tommy, who was now 8 years old, had become a confident and happy boy. At school, he always spoke proudly of his big, close-knit family. "Teacher," he said one day, "my dad used to get confused before, but not anymore. Do you know why?" "Why, Tommy?" "Because he found his family. My grandma said that when you find where you belong, everything gets easier." The teacher was touched by the child's simple wisdom. At home, Michael continued to improve every day. His episodes of confusion had practically disappeared. Occasionally, when he was very stressed, he still got a little disoriented, but now he knew exactly what to do: seek out his family. "You know, Mom," Michael said on one such occasion, "all those years when I got confused, it was because a part of me knew something was missing. Now that I know who I am and where I come from, my mind finally has peace." Barbara hugged her son. "And my heart has peace too, after 40 years of searching for you." David, who had recently gotten married, brought his wife Amanda to live in the house as well. Amanda was immediately charmed by the family, and especially by Tommy, who gained a loving aunt. "Michael," Amanda said one day, "you have an amazing family." "I know," he replied. "It took me 40 years to find them, but it was worth the wait." "And Tommy? Are you happy with so many changes?" He's beaming. He always wanted a big family. Now he has a grandmother, uncle, aunt. Only his mother is missing. Amanda noticed a sadness in Michael's eyes when she mentioned Tommy's mother. "Have you ever thought about looking for her?" "Sometimes. But she made a choice 6 years ago. I don't know if it would be fair to Tommy to relive that rejection." "What if she changed her mind? What if she regretted it?" Michael thought about that, but decided it was better to leave things as they were. Tommy was happy and loved, and that was what mattered. On Tommy's 10th birthday, the family organized a big party at the new house. They invited school friends, neighbors, and Michael and David's co-workers. During the party, a young woman appeared at the gate. She looked at the party hesitantly, as if unsure whether she should enter. Barbara, who was serving the guests, noticed the woman and approached. "Can I help you?" I'm looking for Michael Rogers and his son Tommy," said the woman nervously. Barbara felt her heart race. "Could it possibly be—" "May I ask who you are? My name is Jessica. I'm Tommy's mother." Barbara was speechless for a moment. "Wait here a moment," she said, and quickly went to find Michael. "Michael," she said, pulling him aside, "Tommy's mother is here." Michael turned pale. "Jessica, here. She's at the gate, wanting to talk to you." Michael looked at Tommy, who was playing happily with his little friends. What could she want after all this time? There's only one way to find out. Michael took a deep breath and went to the gate. When he saw Jessica, he felt a mix of anger, hurt, and curiosity. "Jessica, after 8 years. Michael, I know I have no right to be here, but I needed to see you." "Why? Why now?" Jessica looked at the party, seeing Tommy in the distance. "He's grown so much. He's so big." "Jessica, answer my question. Why now?" "Because I made the biggest mistake of my life when I left. Because not a single day has gone by without me thinking about you. Because I want a second chance." Michael felt the anger grow in his chest. "A second chance. You abandoned your son when he needed you most. You abandoned both of us when we were going through the hardest times. I know, and I regret it every day." "And what changed? Why would it be different now?" "Because I grew up, Michael. Because I understood that running from problems doesn't solve them. Because I love you and I want to fight for our family." Michael looked at Tommy, who still hadn't noticed his mother's presence. "Jessica, it doesn't work like that. You can't just show up after 8 years and expect everything to go back to normal. I don't expect that. I know it will be difficult, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Barbara, who was watching from a distance, approached. "Michael, perhaps you should talk more calmly, away from the party." Michael thought for a moment. "Jessica, I'll ask my mother to stay with Tommy. Let's talk inside." They headed to the living room of the house, leaving the party in the backyard. David noticed the movement and approached Barbara. "Who is that woman?" "Tommy's mother." "Wow. And now?" "Now they need to work this out between them." In the living room, Michael and Jessica sat facing each other. There was so much to say that neither knew where to begin. "Jessica," Michael said finally, "you made a choice 8 years ago. You said you couldn't handle my problems, the responsibility of being a mother. I was scared, Michael. I was too young. I didn't know how to handle everything. And you think it was easy for me? You think I wasn't scared too? I know you were, and I know I was a coward to leave. It wasn't just cowardly. It was cruel. You left a 2-year-old boy wondering why Mommy went away." Jessica began to cry. I know I hurt you. But Michael, I wasn't well mentally back then. I was having serious problems and I thought it would be better for you if I left. Why didn't you seek help? Why didn't you talk to me?" "Because I was ashamed. Because I thought you would give up on me too." Michael fell silent for a moment. "Jessica, a lot has changed in these 8 years." "I know. I heard you found your family. I'm happy for you." "How did you know?" "I always knew where you lived. I sometimes passed by the street, just to see if you were okay." Michael was shocked. "You were spying on us?" "Not spying, I needed to know if my son was okay." "So you saw when we moved here?" "I did. I saw how happy he is, how he has a big family now. I saw that you're doing well, that you don't have those episodes of confusion anymore. And still you came here today?" "I came because I understood that I can't spend my whole life hiding from my mistake. I came because my son deserves to have a mother, even if she's a mother who made mistakes." Michael looked out the window, seeing Tommy playing in the backyard with his friends. "Jessica, he is happy. He has a family that loves him. He's doing well in school. He has friends. Why should I risk disturbing that? Because I am his mother, and even though I made mistakes, that bond doesn't disappear. For him, it has. He barely remembers you. Then, let me build new memories with him. Michael sighed deeply. It's not just about you and him, Jessica. It's about us too. About how you hurt me when you left. Do you still love me? The question took Michael by surprise. He was silent for a long moment. I don't know. I loved you very much. But after you left, I learned to live without you. I learned that I can be happy without you. And is there no room to forgive me? Forgiving is different from forgetting. It's different from trusting again. End of story. Tell us in the comments what you thought of this amazing story. Do you think Jessica deserves a second chance, or should Michael protect Tommy's current happiness? Leave your opinion and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories.